Hello traders, this is the weekend edition of technical analysis here in Grok Trade. Well, the week is over and the 3-day weekend for traders has begun. And today we had a day without much excitement in the markets, except for the Dow Jones, who did have a nice pop of 0.58% to the upside. But the rest of the indices had a very moderate, the S&P 0.18% to the upside, Nasdaq basically flat, and Russell's also basically flat. The VIX was basically flat, and the financials had a small movement to the upside of 0.28%. And let's take a look at the indices to see what they are telling us as we prepare for the next week of trading. And this is the Dow Jones, who had the bigger pop this today in the markets. And the reason is that we are actually trading over resistance. Pay attention to the green lines, which are my trend lines for the daily chart. For right now, ignore the blue lines. But for this daily chart, we have the Dow Jones going over this line of resistance, which is now support. And this is a significant line of resistance because it's being traced using two major swings. And in the close-up, you can see that not only we went above this line, but also we broke out of this line of resistance right here. And so there is no surprise that today it was the Dow, the index with the bigger movement in today's session. And as we can see, it is looking good. It is looking bullish for next week. In the weekly chart, basically, the two green lines also give us the main idea, which is that the Dow is in a bullish position over resistance with some space until we reach the following trend line, which shows us some potential to the upside. And in the monthly, even though the potential to the upside to the next trend line is not quite as big, however, you can see we have enough space for one more month of bullish activity, fairly significant. So as far as the Dow is concerned, we still have some potential. And now let's take a look at the Russells. And the Russells are also looking good. In the daily chart, we see that by yesterday, we broke out of this line of resistance. And even though today wasn't the best day for the Russells in the week, however, we're still above this trend line, with plenty of space to go until the next trend line. By the way, the green trend lines are for the daily, the orange ones are for the weekly, and we can see that basically here, the same trend line, and the blue is for the monthly. So the Russell's daily is looking good. We have broken above significant resistance, and we have plenty of space till the following one. In the weekly of the Russell's, we are also above resistance with some space until the next trend line. So the Russell's daily and weekly are also bullish. And in the monthly, the Russell's are a little more limited. It looks like we're pretty close to this line of resistance, this blue line, although to be fair, this is not the strongest trend line. We don't seem to have swings significant enough to be able to look for this trend line. So the way that I drew this line is just basically cloning this line and doing a parallel line. I'm also gonna draw this line right here, but I'll have to just keep watching it to see how significant this line becomes. Do remember that the drawing of trend lines at times is not quite as exact as we would like it to be. Sometimes it's more of an art. So once you draw your lines, you have to keep looking at them and reevaluating whether they are significant enough and valid enough constantly. So as of right now, I do have this line, which is basically the parallel line to this line of support. This one could also have some truth to it, because we capture these two swings, so there could be some significance to it. So as far as the Russells is concerned, the daily is okay, the weekly is okay, the monthly I will just have to keep monitoring during the week. We're still in the middle of the month. We're in this candle, so we will have to see what happens with this candle and this line. As of right now, if we look at the Dow and the Russells, it's still looking good. The Nasdaq, however, is another story. We are under this very significant line of resistance. You can see it right here. Support, support, it becomes resistance, 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 and we haven't broke out of this line of resistance. So the daily in the Nasdaq is not looking as good, at least not yet. In the weekly, however, the Nasdaq is over this trend line, which is also pretty significant. We captured two swing lows, pretty big ones right here, support, support, that later became resistance, and now we are over. As you can see here, the green line is the daily resistance line, but we're above the weekly resistance, which is good for the bulls. And in the monthly, as we can see, if we're able to go to conquer this line of daily resistance, we would have plenty of space for an upside move up to the next blue line right here, which is the monthly resistance level. So it's not looking too bad for the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the Russells. And the story with the S&P 500 is a little bit different. We're right at resistance. This green line that we see, this trend line that has been working as resistance, 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 and once more resistance. We're not quite over it. So all we need is a little push over this line, and just seeing that the other indices seem to be having the strength to go over their lines and their levels of resistance might be just what the S&P 500 need to get over this line. Although the weekly line of resistance is also pretty close. As we can see right here, we're pretty close to this weekly line of resistance. But if we're able to get over this line, just look how much space we have till the monthly level of resistance. So the markets are actually looking pretty good to me for next week. Of course, we are still overextended, so I don't want to oversell the bullish signs. Just keep this in mind. We're still overextended, and a pullback could come at any minute. But as far as technical analysis, it is not looking so bad. The only index that is right at resistance is the S&P, and so with the Nasdaq and the Russells in good shape, and even now the Dow Jones, there's some good possibilities. That's the difference between last week and this week. Last week, the other indices were also at resistance, but during this week things have changed a little. So, and just to close this video, just want to show you what the financials did this week. The financials, the second best sector in the stock market. So all in all, not a bad week. Now we have some real time to look for some good stocks with technical setups. Of course, we will send you our V-newsletter where we will give you plenty of information of the stocks that we are looking to trade in the next week. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you here next Tuesday.